And good evening. Welcome to Huckabee Today. It's a show about something in very short supply: common sense. We've also got uncommonly interesting conversations with people who are smarter than I am, plus insights into today's news delivered with just enough sarcasm to keep it interesting and maybe even make you chuckle. Not as much of a chuckle as we would get out of Kamala Harris, but a chuckle nonetheless. So stay with us for the next 29 minutes. We think you're going to be very happy. Well, I think it's fair to say that it has been a time like no other in American politics. The Democrats did all they could do to take out former President Trump, or at least minimize his influence so that he would never have another chance at the White House. But in the end, they took out their own candidate, Joe Biden. Biden and his top advisors looked at the electoral map, cross-referenced it with the polls, and decided it would just never, as in never, work, especially after Joe Biden's debate performance exposed just how bad his health condition is, and not the ones they've been trying to suggest publicly. Now they got another problem. Joe Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris for the job, and a lot of people think she doesn't have a chance against Donald Trump. And they're floating a bunch of other names for the job. Meanwhile, former President Trump was back on the campaign trail, talking through his agenda to get the country back on track. And again, another huge crowd, as we would say. With so much to discuss, we're going to jump right in with our friend and guest, former White House spokesman, Hogan Gidley, who used to work for me. Full disclosure, because I don't want you to think that I like this guy, because he worked for me, so I don't like him at all. Welcome back, Hogan. Great to see you again.
Great to be with you, Governor. I appreciate the time.
I know that was not the introduction that you were waiting for, was it? Huh?
It's one I'm used to, though, with you. I think we have a good enough relationship now to go back and forth with each other pretty regularly. So I expected nothing less, but I do appreciate it, of course.
Well, I mean, if people only knew, they would realize that you are like family to our family, and everyone in my entire family, wife, sons, daughter, would all say that. Even my dogs consider Hogan a part of the family. So it is good to have you back. I want us to jump into what's happened over the last few days, Hogan, because there has been so much news taking place. Let's start with Republican National Convention of last week. It seemed pitch perfect. The Republicans orchestrated and executed an absolutely flawless convention. Give us your take on what happened, what was significant, big moments, were there any low moments? What's your assessment?
Well, you've been in politics for a long time, Governor. You were actually a governor in the great state of Arkansas, of course, and I can't remember the last time Republicans had 2 hours consecutive of a good news cycle. We've had 2 weeks, and it was an exclamation point during the convention. What we had seen with an attempted assassination of a president, a former president leading up to that. Now, of course, we have a political assassination of a sitting president. But watching everything go down in Milwaukee, I have never seen the Republican Party more unified. And they keep using that word over and over again, but it wasn't manufactured. Reporters from the extreme left pulled me aside and said, I've never seen anything like this. It reminds me of Obama's support he had in his first run. It was so exciting. People were so happy because you got to see a lot of different opinions and a lot of different folks on that stage. I was up in one of the boxes talking to some various convention goers, etc. And I look down, I see Amber Rose on stage, and someone goes, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Look, I don't even have the time. You just go look it up yourself. I'm not even going to do that." And then you have the president of the Teamsters Union, Hulk Hogan, ripping his shirt off on stage, Kid Rock playing, and while he's doing his music act, I'm talking to Rod Blagojevich in one of the suites as well. This is not the Republican Party of old. Donald Trump has taken and unified our party, but has also gone outside the realm of what we would consider typical Republican voters and say, no, you're welcome here. Our policies improved your lives. Come see it. Come hear it. And on top of that, he had real people up there giving heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching stories about children they'd lost to fentanyl overdoses because of Biden's border policies, or people, Gold Star families, saying that their children were killed in the line of duty because of Joe Biden's failures as well. It had every single emotion you would want to have in a convention. But despite all of that, it was still all about the policies that improve people's lives. That's what it came down to. And I think it was a real big exclamation point on unity. And when you take a look at the Democrats and what they're trying to deal with, they're still trying to court black voters in July. They don't have Hispanic voters in July. And now they don't even have anyone at the top of the ticket yet. So the whole thing is a disaster on their side.
I'm glad you brought up a couple of the people, Amber Rose and the union president of the Teamsters, because that was significant. And when I first heard that Amber Rose was going to be on the platform and speaking, I thought, who on earth thought that was a good idea? But then I heard her, and then I said to myself, whoever thought of this, it was a brilliant idea. She was one of the best speakers of the week because she spoke very candidly from the heart, and she talked about how that she had been a really far left person, believed that that was the way she should think. And her dad said, why don't you just go check it out for yourself? And she said, I did. And I got to apologize because I was wrong. I started looking at the facts. I thought her testimony was one of the strongest of the week. The fact that the Teamsters president was there, that was huge. And I agree with you, the everyday people, the folks whose lives have been affected by the policies of the current administration, were incredibly effective. They were articulate. They had just the right amount of emotion, passion, sympathy, deep sense of wound and hurt. I just thought, as you did, and I've been going to conventions. I've been to every one of them since 1992, and I've never seen one, even when we didn't have any controversy. I've never seen one in which there was such a unified spirit and an overwhelming sense of purpose and mission. So hats off to the planners of the program. All right, let's get to the biggest story that's going on this week. How do we ignore the fact Joe Biden, on a Twitter feed Sunday afternoon, said, I'm going to step aside as candidate. He did not, however, step aside as president. And one wonders, if you're not up to the task of being a candidate for the office, are you up to the task of holding the office? And I think that's a legitimate question for people to ask. But Hogan, in addition to that, how surprising is it that he didn't make an address to the American people? He didn't show up even so much as in the East Room or the balcony of the White House. He issues something on Twitter, and you wonder,
no still
did he
photo.
Actually write that? Did he even know it was being sent out? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think those are questions that are going to come out, answers to questions that will come out sooner rather than later, because people are disgruntled, I think, in that building, because a lot of them said they didn't know this was actually happening. I mean, that morning you had people on television saying Joe Biden has made this decision. He's staying in. But everyone needs to understand, you cannot underestimate the power of influence that the media has. They have literally worked to push someone out as president. Now, yeah, there were Democrats too, but the media outcry is the one that really kind of started to tip the scales in the direction of removing Joe Biden. And so now they're going to come back and tell you Kamala Harris is the best vice president we've ever had. She's so ready to begin on day one. She has done so many amazing jobs as vice president and as senator. Her record is unassailable. So we're going to hear many more lies there. But it should be noted, I think the Trump campaign did a really good job at the outset saying, Kamala was complicit. She was part of this lie that said Joe Biden behind the scenes was a triathlete. He was doing handstands down the hallways of the White House because he's that, physically fit. He's not cognitively declined. What are you talking about? He's sharp as a tack, they would say. So I think branding her early on as someone who has lied to the American people is important and a really significant step in starting that campaign off on the right foot, because in a lot of ways the campaign is correct. This is not a different race. It's just a different person who could be at the top of the ticket. There'll be some conversation about how can they transfer the money and is that legal, and they'll kind of deal with that minutia. But the issues are still there because you still can't afford gas and groceries. You still have a wide open southern border, fentanyl, human trafficking, child smuggling, wars breaking out all over the world. And remember, Kamala Harris said, I'm right here with Joe on all these things. So she owns all of that. And the more they focus on that, the better off we'll be.
I think it's a good point. It's not the personalities, it's the policies that Americans want
Yep.
changed. So you can switch the names and switch the genders and switch the persons, but you still have the same policies that have been trampling so many American families and the cost of fundamental living. That's where we are. We got to take a quick break because, quite frankly, if it weren't for these breaks, we wouldn't be able to do this show. So I hope you pay good attention to those who sponsor the show because they really are our heroes. They're the ones who make it possible for us to be with you. We've got a lot more to discuss with Hogan Gidley. We'll be right back with him after this. We are back with former White House advisor Hogan Gidley. Hogan, just today, congressional hearings have been conducted on Capitol Hill in which both Democrats and Republicans have been stonewalled in a massive way from Kim Cheadle, the director of the U.S. Secret Service. I've never seen something quite like this in 10 years on Capitol Hill. Someone has finally brought unity in Washington, and it was Kim Cheadle of all people, because the Democrats and the Republicans are completely unified in their contempt for her and her lack of leadership, lack of candor, lack of transparency in trying to explain to us how a 20-year-old kid got up on a roof within 130 yards of former President Donald Trump and got a shot off that, but by the grace of God and a couple of just fractions of inches, wouldn't have taken his head off. And she can't even tell us how many shell casings they found, how many shots were fired, who fired the shot that took out the shooter, why didn't they cover the roof? Let's dig into this a little bit. Why is she being so utterly obtuse when it comes to answering simple questions? And let me reference it. If there's any mass shooting in America, within a couple of hours, you have 6 or 7 heads of police agencies at a podium. They're giving answers. They're telling us all sorts of things about the crime scene and the shooter. In this case, she kept saying, it's only been 9 days. And my screaming at the television saying, yes, lady, that's the problem. It's been 9 days and you still haven't acknowledged fundamental facts. So unpack that for us and help us understand why Americans should be just incensed at these non-answers.
Well, either she can't answer them or she won't answer them. Either way, it's not good. What we saw was a systematic failure of the Secret Service to do the one job they are supposed to do, which is protect the President of the United States. And while both sides of the aisle, as you mentioned, are focused on trying to make sure we actually get answers here, it seems what they're trying to do is prevent us from getting them. In fact, she said, oh, we'll have a report in 60 to 90 days. That is unacceptable. There are a lot of events that Donald Trump will hold between now and the election, a lot of events that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will hold between now and the election, and I think the American people deserve answers. Now, the Secret Service agents I know and worked with, myself and your daughter, got to know really well. They're extremely brave, competent people who love this country, love their job. You saw some of those jump on top of the president on that stage and sacrifice their life for his. That's heroic. The question becomes, why did they have to do it in the first place? How did that guy get up there with a rangefinder, a ladder, and a gun, and a car full of explosives? She won't answer those questions. And what's worse is she won't even resign. She doesn't have the dignity or the self-awareness at the need to resign. The person who is in charge of the Secret Service, as brought out in these hearings, which was a great point by one of the Republican congressmen, who oversaw that department when Ronald Reagan was shot here in D.C., was a Republican appointee. He resigned. He said, my job is to protect the president. We didn't. It's a failure. I got to go. She's just standing there saying, nope, I'm getting my government check and I like it and I don't have to answer your questions. And one more thing I would point out, her face looks so indignant, so angry that she even has to be there. She should be contrite. She should be remorseful. She should be apologetic that what she did failed the American people, failed Donald Trump, and she needs to take accountability. But so far, no examples of doing that.
I think that's a keen assessment. Her aura, her countenance in that congressional hearing was one of contempt for the very people she ought to be
Yeah.
crawling on the floor and apologizing to. They have the right, as members of Congress, of oversight of that agency and of her. And she acts like, how dare you question me? Well, that's exactly their job. They're doing theirs. Too bad she didn't do hers. All right, well, stay with us. We have more to talk about with Hogan Gidley. We'll do it right after this break. And by the way, when you're supposed to, be listening carefully, there's one thing that we'd love for you to do, and that's send me an email, whether it's off your iPhone or your laptop. Simple enough, send it to me at comments@MikeHuckabee.com. You can send criticisms, dad jokes, even a recipe for something delicious. I might even make it and share it with the staff. Send it to comments@MikeHuckabee.com. We'll be right back with Hogan Gidley after this. Welcome back. Hogan Gidley is with me, former White House advisor. He's been working with the America First Foundation, and hopefully will have some role in the next presidential administration. We shall see. Hogan, the Democrats are in meltdown. I think that's pretty fair. Joe Biden's off the ticket by his own hand. At least we think it was his own hand. We've seen his Twitter account. That's all we've seen. But Kamala Harris isn't exactly a unanimous choice. I mean, she's trying to bring the party together and rally around her. But there's one glaring example of a prominent Democrat who has not signed on yet. One Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle. Why have they been reluctant to jump on the Kamala train?
Well, Joe Biden is, a failure in politics, having been in elected office for half of a century with not much to show for it. But Barack Obama is one of the most savvy politicians on the planet. He's very smart. He understands the ramifications of an early endorsement here. Now, understand, Kamala Harris has done nothing right as vice president. She was a horrible candidate, never got a single vote. Remember, she got out of the race before votes were even cast. She stood on a debate stage and called Joe Biden a segregationist and a sex criminal, had T-shirts made ready to go to try and make that moment into some type of momentum. It couldn't happen. She ruined that one chance she had. And so moving forward, I think people out there who are jumping on her bandwagon have a real problem on their hands because she is so wildly unpopular. She ranked eighth amongst black voters in that primary behind lily white Bernie Sanders and fake Indian Elizabeth Warren. They're going to have to figure out this whole situation on their own and come up with a nominee. I think there will be a fight. Now, how that fight manifests itself, whether it be in public, on a convention floor, or back behind the scenes with all those donors, remains to be seen, because the precedent's now set. If you can just kick someone off the ticket because they're losing to Trump, they may not settle on Kamala because she's losing to Trump too. Let's just go through the Rolodex for a minute and find a Democrat suitable that we think can win. It's a disaster on their side, but going into an election, remember, it's the nuts and bolts. You know this, the blocking and tackling, the poll watcher, poll worker, the voter registration, voter mobilization, ballot harvest, ballot chase. Those are the non-sexy things it takes to win an election. And regardless of the nominee on the Democrat side, Republicans have to know that and put in the work needed to win the election.
It's going to be a fun summer to watch how this plays out. Hogan Gidley, great to have you back. Thanks so much. And we'll always say this, whether it's true or not, we'll say it, that you're welcome back anytime. It's just the right thing to say. But in your case, you really are. In a moment, we're going to take a look at some of your emails. I hope you've been sending them to us. We'll read some of them when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We have some of your emails that you've been sending to us. We love getting them. And you can send us to them at comments@MikeHuckabee.com. Let's take a look. We have this from Tom. He says, the interview with the Secret Service agent, former Secret Service agent, was awesome. I totally agree with you, Tom. It was some insights that he should be on Capitol Hill talking about instead of Kim Cheadle. From Texas comes Ann. She says, Governor, you talked about God was with President Trump, which I believe God was with him. But Corey was a godly man. Why didn't God protect him? There's some things we can't answer. The Bible says the rain falls on the just and the unjust. We're not exempted from calamities and difficulties even if we're strong believers. Corey apparently was, and our hearts go out to his family. We get this from Mary from Cabot, Arkansas. Your shows are so interesting. We can't wait to see Sarah on your show during the week. I kind of look forward to it as well. We're hoping to make that happen. I want to say thanks to all of you for watching our brand new show called Huckabee Today. Hope you see our weekend show coming to you from Nashville. But we enjoy getting to hear from you. So please let us hear from you. Comments at MikeHuckabee.com. On behalf of all of our staff and crew here at Huckabee Today, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for Alan Jackson. Till then, good night and God bless.